Hi, it's me again with Corel Draw tips and tricks, and this is part 2 of this video. If you're doing something like this, and if you didn't watch part 1, I've changed these joints to fit 1/8" plywood and actually make it fit even better. What I would do before I would cut this out personally, I would hit the plus key on my keyboard or Control D, and I'd make a duplicate of that, and then I'd take these items and I would take a rectangle, and I'd go right here and I would fill this in with the Smart Fill tool, nudge it out of the way. I would take another rectangle, doesn't really matter what size, nudge this out of the way, and then I would select both these and I would left click, right click, and I would cut this out. I would make a test of this, put everything off also on the screen. You can actually delete all this because you made a duplicate. And then if it fits, and you want it to be a little bit tight, but you don't want to be too tight because you might want to not, you want it tight so you don't have to glue it because it'll look better, but too. So let's say it's just a little bit loose. How could you make it just a little bit tighter? Well, this is only a suggestion. It needs to kind of be loose at the bottom, but if we set our nudge factor to like 0.001, which I keep mine all the time, and you grab that node right there and you hit your right arrow key and then grab this one and hit your left arrow key, it has made this thing just minutely wider than the bottom, or narrower than the bottom. So let's take our parallel dimension tool and let's measure from there to there. And I must be off because it should be 0.125. Let's parallel dimension tool from that node to that node, 0.12. Now we need to expand it out. We're actually going to expand it out a little bit more this time. So we're at 12.47. So let's measure the top. It should be just a little bit less, and what that's going to do when you're putting them together, they're going to be a little tighter. And if we change this to 4 digits, so you have 0.127 versus 0.1247. Just a minute little more, and what that's going to happen, the friction at the top is going to, and if you did that to both pieces, this piece and this piece, and make it just a little bit, maybe you wouldn't have to do it for both pieces, but if your item is just a little bit loose, you could do this and you feel sure to test it out. And the other reason I decided to make the video is if you're going to do this and cut the stands out of the wood that's going to be trash, you need to look at it under Windows, Dockers, Objects, and you get your object manager. And if you look, that's going to cut out, that's going to cut out, and this is by chance it's cut in order. It's actually in order. Now I've got something on the page that shouldn't be there. Let's yep, I've got some of those blank lines I moved around. So this ought to cut out perfectly. This one's going to cut out first because it's on the bottom. This is going to cut out second, and then it's going to cut this out. Now to even make it better, you could go to Object and break the curve apart, and now the inside and the outside are two different cuts, and this is in the exact order you need to cut. So you'll cut this one out, and then it's going to fall out when it cuts this out. And the reason you do that is because your outside cut's going to be your last cut. If your laser vector bed is just a little bit uneven and you cut this out first and then try to cut these out, these could be, 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch lower, and you're going to get a little not as good of cut and not as good as, it's going to be out of focus just a little bit. It doesn't really matter. But if you're going to cut out a lot of these, now that you've got this done, you can Control G and make a duplicate, and Control D and make a duplicate, or Control G to make it group. And so now these are going to be the same cut order as the previous one. And we can kind of prove that by going to Object, Group, and Ungroup. You can see that that's going to cut out for, Well, it's grabbing the outside. Let's grab this. It's going to cut out first. That's going to cut out second. That's going to cut out third. And then your outside is going to cut out fourth. So by grouping them together, it keeps them in that order. If you do one, I always do the cut order of my first one. And then say on this page, you could have, you know, this is pretty big. You could have 6 of them on your page. But they're all going to cut out correctly. I hope that helped a little bit. Thanks for watching.